Story 1. I've been a freelance land surveyor for 15 long years. Most of my life has been spent alone in places where no other human voice can reach me. I used to love that silence, the kind that wraps around you like a heavy blanket. But 4 years ago, everything changed. It was a job up in the mountains near the Clearwater region of Idaho. Remote doesn't even begin to describe it. 6 brutal miles of hiking through thick forest just to reach the spot where I decided to set up camp. I did everything by the book, filed my route with the local ranger station, packed supplies for a full week, checked my gear twice. The first day went smoothly. I found 3 boundary markers, logged them carefully, and made it back to camp while there was still light in the sky. The air smelled clean then. Cold pine and fresh snow. I remember sitting outside my tent that night, drinking hot coffee and thinking how lucky I was to do this kind of work, how peaceful it felt. But on the second day, the forest showed its teeth. The forecast had said light snow. What we actually got was much heavier. Thick white flakes falling steadily, covering everything. The next marker was only about a mile away. So I made the decision that I still regret to this day. I told myself it would be quick. Just one more marker and I'd head back. That arrogance almost cost me everything. The terrain was deceptive. Rocks and roots hidden under a fresh layer of snow. Every step felt like walking on thin ice. Literally, I was carefully making my way down a short embankment when my right boot suddenly slipped on a patch of ice I never saw coming. The world tilted. I slid fast. 15 feet of pure panic, my hands clawing desperately at the snow. I caught myself on a thick tree root at the last moment. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then the pain hit sharp, burning. Radiating up from my right ankle, I tried to stand. The moment I put weight on it, I groaned loudly, the sound echoing through the quiet trees. It wasn't broken, but it was a bad sprain. I knew immediately I couldn't continue the survey. No marker is worth dying for. So I turned around and began the painful journey back toward camp. Every step was agony, the snow soaking through my pants, the cold biting into my skin. My breath came out in visible clouds. The forest seemed darker now, even though it was still afternoon. After 20 painful minutes, I noticed something on the trail that made my stomach tighten. Boot prints. They were heading in the same direction I was going, coming from deeper in the woods on my left. The edges were still sharp despite the falling snow. Fresh, very fresh. I told myself it was probably just a hunter, or maybe someone from the landowner's crew. Nothing unusual out here. But something felt off. I kept limping forward, trying to ignore the growing unease. The light started fading. That's when I first heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. At first I thought it was my own imagination, or just the snow shifting on branches. But the more I listened, the more distinct they became, deliberate. Following at a distance, I stopped walking. The footsteps stopped too, but not immediately. There was a 1 or 2 second delay. My mouth went dry. I could feel my pulse throbbing in my injured ankle. I turned around slowly, staring into the dense trees. Nothing but shadows and falling snow. I started walking again. The footsteps returned. This time they felt closer. I kept glancing over my shoulder, my neck muscles tight. The vulnerability was the worst part. With this ankle, I couldn't run. I couldn't even walk quickly. I was completely exposed. Then I heard something else, a low metallic sound. Off to my left, like metal lightly tapping against wood. There shouldn't be anything like that out here. No fences. No equipment, just forest. The original boot prints I had been following earlier, they were gone now. No sign they had branched off, just vanished. My breathing became shallow. I looked to my left, peering through the trees, and that's when I saw them. Another set of footprints running parallel to mine, only 30 or 40 feet away. Someone was walking beside me, hidden just inside the tree line. I froze. My mind raced. I shouldn't have spoken, but fear made me stupid. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice cracking. No answer. Only the wind and falling snow. I waited. 20 long seconds. Nothing. I started moving again, limping as fast as I could. Camp was close now. I just needed to reach it. A heavy branch snapped loudly somewhere behind me. The sound was deliberate. I didn't stop. I kept pushing forward, sweat freezing on my face, pain shooting up my leg with every step. When I finally stumbled into my campsite, it was completely dark. I crawled into the tent with shaking hands and started packing immediately. My ankle throbbed so badly I had to bite my lip to stay quiet. Then I heard it, footsteps, right outside the tent. They weren't coming closer. They were circling, slow, steady, round and round. I sat completely still, barely breathing, imagining how thin the tent fabric was, how easy it would be for someone to slash through it. The circling continued for what felt like 5 or 6 minutes. Then everything went silent. Too silent. I waited, listening so hard my ears rang. Finally, I took a deep breath, unzipped the tent, and stepped out into the snow. There he was, standing at the edge of the tree line, perfectly still. An old man, sickly thin. His skin looked almost gray under the beam of my headlamp. His eyes were sunken deep into his skull. He looked like he was dying, or had already been dead for a while. We stared at each other. My hands were raised. "I don't want any trouble," I whispered. He didn't move. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then he spoke. His voice was dry, like leaves scraping across stone. "You're a lucky man." He turned slowly and disappeared into the darkness. I didn't sleep that night. I packed up and hiked out in complete darkness, ankles screaming, every shadow making me flinch. When I finally reached safety and got my ankle treated, the doctor said it was a miracle I hadn't caused permanent damage. I reported the old man. Nothing ever came of it. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear those footsteps circling my tent, and I still wonder what he meant by lucky. Lucky that he let me live. Or lucky that I never learned what he really was, waiting out there in the snow. Story 2. I'm 29 years old now, but 3 years ago I thought I knew everything about the Alaskan wilderness. I had been working as a wilderness guide for years. I grew up in Fairbanks. Summers spent at fish camps, early 20s, guiding hunters and photographers into places most people only see in documentaries. I didn't get lost. I didn't get rattled, at least. That's what I believed until that trip with Randy. Randy was my boyfriend of 4 years. He was the male version of me, maybe even better in some ways, especially winter navigation. He grew up in rural British Columbia and could read the snow like a book. We loved doing trips that would break most couples. Week-long hunts, backcountry camping, where one mistake could actually kill you. That was our normal. This time the plan was simple. Snowmobile between 2 state-registered cabins about 60 miles apart. We had done the exact route twice before without any issues. The weather forecast looked good when we left. Clear skies, light wind, nothing to worry about. The first day was peaceful. The cold air bit at my cheeks but felt refreshing. The sound of the snowmobiles cutting through fresh powder was almost soothing. We reached the second cabin by late afternoon. We ate those terrible frees. Dried meals Randy always claimed tasted fine, then played cards by lantern light. I remember laughing with him, feeling warm and safe despite the freezing world outside. The next morning everything changed. I woke up to a full blizzard raging outside, wind howling like something angry. Snow so thick you couldn't see more than 20 feet. It came out of nowhere. The forecast had said nothing about this. We should have stayed put. We had plenty of food and fuel, but we were both stubborn. Randy looked at me and said we could push through. I agreed. That decision still haunts me. The storm was worse than anything I had seen. Visibility was almost zero. Randy took the lead. I followed the faint trail of his snowmobile tracks, focusing hard on staying close. The cold seeped through every layer. My fingers grew numb inside thick gloves. My face burned from the wind. Then it happened. 1 second Randy was moving steadily ahead. The next his snowmobile flipped violently. The sound of metal crashing and his leg breaking still echoes in my nightmares. I slammed on the brakes and ran to him through deep snow. His leg was bent at an impossible angle. He was breathing hard, trying not to scream. I tried to get him onto my snowmobile. God, I tried so many times. He was 6'2", over 200 pounds. In deep snow, with the machine already hard to control, it was nearly impossible. I managed to drag him up once. He lasted maybe 10 seconds before sliding off with a gut-wrenching cry of pain. I tried again. Same result. Every time the snowmobile shifted even slightly, he couldn't hold on. Finally, he told me to stop. His voice was calm, but final. We both knew what that meant. I pulled out the satellite phone with shaking hands. The wind made it hard to hear. I sent our coordinates and a distress message, but I wasn't sure it went through. We couldn't just wait. Randy was bleeding internally possibly, and the cold was already winning. The only plan was for me to leave him there with every piece of warmth we had. All extra layers, sleeping bags, food, the emergency shelter, and ride alone to the nearest cabin to use the emergency radio. I bundled him up as best I could, marked the GPS. Looked into his eyes one last time. He told me to be careful. He told me not to do anything stupid. Then I left him there, sitting in the snow, watching me disappear into the whiteout. I rode for what felt like forever. 45 minutes in, nothing looked familiar. The landmarks I knew were gone, buried under snow. The terrain felt wrong. Panic started creeping in slowly, like cold fingers around my throat. I kept telling myself it was just the storm messing with my mind. Then I saw it. Smoke rising through the trees to my left. Thin gray smoke against the white chaos. My heart jumped. Smoke meant people. People meant a radio or at least warmth. I turned the snowmobile and pushed toward it. The cabin was small, ugly, one side almost completely buried in a snowdrift. It looked old, forgotten, but there was a faint warm glow in the window and smoke curling from the chimney. I killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, except for the howling wind. I trudged through deep snow to the door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. The handle turned easily. It was unlocked. The moment I stepped inside, the warmth hit me like a wave. It was almost too warm. A wood stove in the corner crackled with a strong fire. There was a bedroll on the floor, a half-eaten can of beans with a spoon still sticking out of it. It looked like someone had walked out just minutes before I arrived. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing strangely. "Is anyone here? I need help. My boyfriend is hurt." No response. I stood there, warming my frozen hands by the stove, trying the satellite phone again. No signal. The storm was too strong. I knew I couldn't stay long. Randy was out there dying, but the warmth felt so good after the freezing ride. It was hard to leave. That's when I noticed the shelf on the back wall. A pair of binoculars, a folded map, a worn notebook. I picked up the map first. It was a detailed trail map of the exact area we had been riding. Several spots were circled in red marker. 2 of them were the exact cabins Randy and I had been using. Dates were written next to them, going back 2 or 3 winters. My stomach dropped. I opened the notebook with cold, trembling fingers. Page after page of handwritten notes, descriptions of people, what they wore, which direction they were traveling, how many in the group, dates and times. It was a log, a hunting log, but not for animals. I was reading faster now, my breath shallow. There were entries that matched our trip almost exactly. The realization hit me like ice water. Whoever lived here had been watching us, maybe for days. I put everything down quickly. The cabin no longer felt safe. It felt like a trap. I turned toward the door. Then the loudest, most terrifying scream I have ever heard erupted from directly beneath the floorboards. A woman's scream, raw, agonized, endless. Like someone was being tortured in the most horrible way possible. It wasn't words, just pure pain and terror. The sound froze me completely. My heart stopped for a second. Then pure adrenaline took over. I ran for the door, nearly tripping over the bedroll. I burst outside into the storm, started the snowmobile with shaking hands, and rode away as fast as I could without looking back. I don't remember much of the rest of that ride. The scream kept playing in my head over and over. I eventually reached the real cabin and got through on the emergency radio. They sent a helicopter for Randy. He survived, but barely, severe hypothermia, and a badly broken leg. When the storm cleared, I told everyone about the cabin and the scream. A search team went out. They found nothing. No cabin, no structure matching my description at all. To this day, I live with 3 possible truths, and all of them terrify me. Maybe the cold and fear made me hallucinate the entire thing. Maybe there really was a woman under those floorboards and I left her there to die. Or maybe the cabin and the scream were a trap. Bait meant to lure someone exactly like me. And if I had arrived just a little earlier, it would have been me screaming under the floor while someone else rode away into the storm. I still hear that scream sometimes when I'm alone in the snow. Story 3, her name was Sienna Rawlings. Even after all these years, just thinking about her makes my skin crawl in a way I can't fully explain. She wasn't like other girls in high school. She had this cold, quiet beauty that felt almost unnatural, like fresh snow covering everything. Beautiful but dangerous. She didn't smile much. She didn't talk much. Most people thought she was weird. I thought she was fascinating. I was obsessed with her for months. I even named a character in the fantasy story I was writing after her. That obsession led to the worst day of my teenage life. It started on the stairs one afternoon. I was talking with my friend George about my story when he asked about the characters' names. The moment I said Sienna, she turned the corner with one of her friends. She looked at me with those icy eyes and gave the faintest smirk. "Yeah, because you love me," she said quietly before walking past. My face burned with embarrassment, but something came over me. Right there in the hallway, I asked her out. She stopped, gave me one of her long, piercing stares. Then, surprisingly, she agreed. She gave me her number and said she would text me. A few days later, she organized everything. a hike on a trail I had never heard of, 45 minutes drive from town. When we arrived at the small gravel parking lot, there were only 2 other cars. Sienna didn't hesitate. She started walking. I followed. For the first 20 minutes or so, things felt almost perfect. Sienna was more talkative than I had ever seen her. She asked about my story. I told her the rough plot while trying not to sound stupid. The forest was quiet except for our footsteps and occasional birds. Then the trail narrowed. The trees grew denser. We hadn't seen another person for a long time. The path split into a fork. Sienna pointed left without any hesitation. I asked if she had been here before. She said no. But the way she chose felt too confident. The left path was more overgrown, less maintained. I felt uneasy but didn't want to question her. We walked single file. I went first because she gestured for me to. After a while I realized something was wrong. I couldn't hear her footsteps behind me anymore. I stopped, turned around. The trail behind me was empty. "Sienna?" I called out. No answer. Only the wind through the trees. I walked back to the fork, calling her name louder and louder. Nothing. No footprints branching off, no side trails. It was like she had vanished into thin air. Confusion turned to worry. Then to fear. I tried the right fork. It was even more overgrown. I kept calling her name like an idiot. That's when I heard it. A branch snapping loudly to my left, deeper in the trees. I saw movement behind a thick trunk. My first thought was that Sienna was messing with me. It would fit her personality, so I decided to sneak up and scare her first. I moved as quietly as I could, heart beating fast. At the last second I jumped around the tree yelling. It wasn't Sienna. It was a tall, middle-aged man with cold, empty eyes. He didn't look surprised at all. He just stared at me. I stumbled backward. Before I could think clearly, I blurted out that I was looking for my friend. He started walking toward me slowly. Then I heard another sound from my right. A second man stepped out from behind trees, openly watching me. He was holding a thick branch like a weapon. That's when pure terror took over. I ran. They chased me immediately. No more hiding. I could hear them crashing through the underbrush behind me. Branches whipped my face. I tasted blood in my mouth, my lungs burned. One of them grabbed my ankle and I fell hard. I screamed and kicked desperately. Somehow I broke free and kept running. I don't know how long I ran, but I eventually found the main trail again and made it back to the parking lot. Sienna's car was still there, but she wasn't. I called her phone over and over. No answer. I was about to call the police when she texted me asking where I had gone. Then I saw her. She walked calmly out of the tree line, completely unharmed, not even breathing hard. She looked mildly irritated. The ride home was the longest 45 minutes of my life. I told her everything. She barely reacted. When I demanded to know where she went, she said she thought I had gone ahead and she was trying to catch up. I knew she was lying, the way she chose the trail, the way she disappeared at the perfect moment, the way those men appeared right after, the way she came back completely calm. It felt orchestrated. I never saw Sienna again after that day. She disappeared from my life as suddenly as she disappeared on that trail. But sometimes I still wonder if the girl I went hiking with was ever really Sienna at all, or if she was something much worse, something that had been watching me for a long time.